Everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. Apologies for the few minutes late. Calling to order the Thursday, July 17th.
Recording in progress.
Thursday, July 17th, 2025 meeting of the Palo Alto Architectural Review Board. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Rosenberg,
Present.
Vice Chair Chen,
Present.
Board Member Hirsch. We have quorum.
We have two absences today, so those were planned and scheduled ahead of time, so we were aware of them. But we do have the three of us here and we are ready to review all projects. So public comment at this time. Do we have any raised hands or comment cards? The public comment is for anyone from the public who wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda. If you have an item you'd like to speak about that's agendized, you will have time for that later. Everyone has 3 minutes to talk.
Through the chair, I received no public comment cards, and at the moment, no one has raised their hand to speak on Zoom.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda changes, additions, and deletions for this meeting.
Good morning. We do have one change here. So that would be the ad hoc, so agenda item 4. So that is for the address located at 3265 El Camino Real. So the new ad hoc committee assignment is Chair Rosenberg and Vice Chair Chen.
Thank you for that. City official reports.
Good morning again.
Thanks.
Let me share my screen here. All right. Well, here we are in July. We have some upcoming and recently submitted items. There are no recently submitted items. For planning ahead for August, we will be holding our chair and vice chair elections, and we will be hearing 762 San Antonio Road, which is a builder's remedy project. And I pulled a rendering from their plan set here on the screen. We do have 10 remaining meetings of the year, so about halfway through, if you will. And the planned absences are detailed on the screen. So if any of the board members have any additional planned absences, please direct that either to my attention or staff's.
Great, thank you.
And I do have some further updates. So on August 28th, we will be holding a boards and commissions recognition event. And on July 30th, the required anti-harassment training is due. So if there are any issues with accessing the training portal, please contact me and I can help assist you with that. And I can entertain any further questions.
Only having to look right and left once makes this a little bit easier. All right, I think we are good to go on that front. David, did you have something? Are you good? Okay. Perfect. Okay. And with that, we will move on to, excuse me. We'll move on to action item number 2, public hearing quasi judicial, 180 El Camino Real, recommendation on the applicant's request for approval of a major architectural review application for exterior storefront revisions and improvements, including a redesigned outdoor dining area, facade revisions, and signage for a new tenant, Cedar and Sage. Can we have the staff presentation, please? Actually, we're going to go for disclosures first. Do we need disclosures?
I visited the site.
Visited the site previously, but not recently.
I went second visit
Perfect.
this past week.
Okay, excellent. All right, then let's go into the staff presentation. Morning.
Thank you, board. Cameron Harrison, Michael Baker International, presenting for staff. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, again, this item is for the Stanford Shopping Center Cedar and Sage project at 180 El Camino Real, and it's for facade changes, outdoor dining, and signage for the tenant. The project is located in Building DD, Suite 1301, and it's formerly the Terrain Cafe. This project was heard before the ARB at the May 15th meeting. At that time, the ARB did provide some direction to the applicant's team for some items to address and then to return to the ARB is the reason that we're here today. So again, those 4 items that were addressed were pathway clearance, asking the applicant to make sure that they provided an 8-foot free and clear exterior walkway in the surrounding area around the tenant space. Also about sustainable design. As you all may recall, there are some gas heaters that are proposed for the project. And you all asked the applicant's team to explore other alternatives to gas for the heating, high quality design, basically better integration of the proposed canopy with the building, and then also some additional information for the plaster material that will be used on the building. So the applicant's team went back and revised their proposal and to address these comments. And so in regards to comment number 1 regarding the 8-foot walkway, the Simon team has agreed to relocate the existing bollards nearby the tenant space. Those will be moved kind of to the west, so closer to the curb, which thereby will allow for that 8-foot free and clear clearance around the tenant area. And you can see in the site plan drawing that the 8 feet is being provided from all of those points. So no longer pinch points under that 8 feet. For comment number 2, exploring other heating options. The applicant's team did go back and take a look at this. So the existing electrical service for the building will only accommodate 4 heaters for the patio space, which is not adequate for the needs of this particular tenant. So in order to use electric heaters, they would have to install new electric service for the building at the cost of like approximately $90,000. So due to, it's not very feasible due to economics and some functional challenges. So you will see that the gas heaters are still being proposed, but the applicant did make an effort to see what other options were out there other than the gas heating. As far as the revised patio design, the existing metal canopy that is on building DD currently will now be removed. If you may recall, that canopy was shown as remaining in the previous design. So now that has been removed. The canopy will now follow, the radius of the design of the facade of the building. The awnings will be fixed and in place. Previously, they were proposed to be retractable awnings over the top portion of the canopy. There will still be like some retractable sunshades that will go between the telescoping window and the bottom of the canopy, but the remaining awnings will be fixed and in place. And then lastly, for the plaster, there were some additional details and images provided. I believe you all may have received a hard copy sample of the material as well to address the additional information about the plaster that's being provided. One other thing I want to point out is in the plan set currently, I just want to let the ARB know that the parking spreadsheet has been updated since the version that is in the plan set currently. So staff will go through and make sure that is updated in the final plan set that is ultimately approved. So with that, staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board take the following action and discuss and provide direction or confirm that the revised project meets the ARB's full direction and recommend the director approve the project. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Apologies, I'm eating a croissant. Do we have any questions for staff? Limited scope onto what she presented. Any questions for staff? I have none at this time. Okay. At this point, we'll go into the applicant presentation. You'll have 10 minutes to speak. Please state and spell your name for the record, as you know.
Good morning. Thank you, Tamara. Board members. Chair. Jason Smith, SMITH, Land Shark Development, 122 North Harbor Boulevard, Fullerton, California. Thank you again. Pleasure to be back in front of you. We did have the opportunity to look at the items that were requested. We reviewed them all thoroughly, and I think we have a comprehensive response to the items. And with us today again, I have JC Clow, as well as the architectural team, to go ahead and speak to the board. And I think we're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. Jason.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you, Tamara. Board members, nice to be back in front of you. I remember all of you from our last visit in May, so nice to see you all again. Thanks for giving us the opportunity. I have to tell you, we're thrilled, very excited to be here in Palo Alto and at Stanford Mall. I think we've addressed all the 4 items, and my architectural and design team did their due diligence. I think you'll find that we went above and beyond. I think that you'll be happy with the things that we addressed and the changes that were made. I think from a design standpoint, from the path of clearance, all the items that Tamara previously went over were addressed. And so we're just glad to be back. We're hopeful that this will be our last visit in front of you all. Not that we don't love coming here, but it's been, we were going to come back on June 19th and then July 3rd and got pushed to today. So we're really hopeful that this is our last visit so we can start construction. We're kind of chomping at the bit and trying to get going and open before the end of the year. So thanks for giving us the opportunity. Nice to see you all again. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Right.
Hello, board members. Chris Canny, C-A-N-N-E-Y with Arcanum Architecture. Yeah, as everyone said, we really took your comments to heart, and I think we've updated the design to be a little more cohesive with the building and more unified and more aesthetic. If you take a little time, I can share my screen, just kind of walk through the changes we made in a little more detail. Bring that up. There we go. For the biggest change I think you'll see is the kind of footprint of the building. I'll go to the plan. We've taken more of a radial design following the curve of the building and omitting that existing horizontal awning that was on the building front, which has really cleaned up the facade and cleaned up the plan. And given this, this patio dining area, more cohesive feel and fit to the building facade. It's now radiating along and following that path of the building. Also, we were able, as Tamara said, to work with Simon to get some additional parking and cover the entire canopy, get to the RCP. And that was one comment. It wasn't a formal comment in the written comments, but it was something that was commented in our last meeting, that we only had a small portion of the canopy covered, and we had this retractable area, felt a little disjointed. We're now able to fully cover this patio. It's a fixed canvas cover, no retractable portions, no open areas, no fixed wedges with retractable portions. So now it's really, just a consistent cover. The wind screens, we had talked about this before. These are retractable, but they go up to 6 feet. We've kind of limited them that height. And then we do have sunshades that roll down that just gives some sun protection on those hot days. Building facade, signage, and graphics has not changed. And then we did work with the contractor to get a little more, get a preliminary sample of the intent with the plaster. I think we'll have another round or two. We'd like to get that plaster a little more fine. It's got the aggregate right now is a little too grainy, but the intent there is kind of shown with the raking that we're trying to achieve. From a seating standpoint, still laid out similarly with a long banquette and banquette seating up against the die wall along the patio. With the Simon's relocation of these bollards and shrinking our patio's footprint slightly, we were able to maintain that 8-foot pathway all the way along. So hopeful that, you know, the revised design fits the Stanford Mall shopping aesthetic, and happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from your team? Just making sure. I don't want to cut you guys off early. All right, questions to the applicant will be held until after public comments and rebuttal. Do we have any public comment cards or raised hands via Zoom?
To the chair, I've received no public comment cards, and I see no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, and then we will dive into questions to the applicant then. If it's all right with you two, I have a couple that I'd like to start off with. Okay. Thank you again for your presentation. Really appreciate seeing you guys back and excited to see this get built. Your Suntex DLT is the canvas. This red one up here is going to be the canvas.
Correct. Yes.
Overhead.
Yes.
Do you guys have a sample of the drop-down shades, or do you know what that material will be?
It'll be a similar color material, but with a 3 to 4% perforation.
More sheer.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
perfect.
It won't be a solid material.
Okay, but it'll be a similar color as well.
Similar color, yes.
And then I have a question about your fireplace.
Yes.
I adore it. But
Yeah, the
I
rendering doesn't quite do it justice, makes it look a little dangerous. I'll go to the,
that was
the
going to be my
detail,
concern is that how
yeah.
do you like I have long hair myself,
no,
so
it-
I could imagine me leaning back after a nice glass of wine and dinner and then
Yes.
fluffing my hair
Exactly.
into the fire. So what is the protection standard?
So there is a 12-inch glass windscreen that encompasses the entire linear fire burner
from the perimeter. Oh,
around that entire perimeter. So
Got it.
this is the burner, and then there's a 12-inch windscreen, glass
Okay.
screen there.
So I'm going to draw on this screen if you hold that still for just
Yep.
1 minute. So it really is glass all the way around.
Yes, correct.
Is it actually in the top as well?
No, that is
Okay,
open.
so it's just the two sides. All right,
Uh,
and then what's the distance sort of from this back here to that there?
That is 6 inches.
6 inches,
Yes.
okay. Okay. I may have some concerns still. So, I just don't want to see anyone sort of accidentally catch
yeah.
themselves on fire. So maybe there's a way that could be.
And that glass can be increased, and that's a standard glass from the manufacturer. If we want
Got
to go 18 inches, we can
Okay.
replace that glass with a custom glass piece. So that, if
Yeah,
that can easily be upsized.
just because it's a safety feature, I would
Mhm.
just get your team to, sort of, whether it's scooching it back 2 more inches, something like
Sure.
that towards the retractable,
Yeah.
something like that. But just
That's-
because it is a danger
Yeah,
issue.
that's an easy detail we can work through.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Okay. And then I think that was actually my only 2 questions. I saw that I had a question about the corner that was going into the 8-foot side, the pathway, but you explained very clearly and you guys diagrammed on the notes how that actually clears in the 2 directions from the bollards. But if we can just look at that really quickly.
Yes, that was,
Yeah, basically that right there, that one. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty clear, the 8'5", the 8'7", and I understand that like maybe if you did it as the crow flies that way, but there is nothing over here.
correct.
So there's a slight wiggle if needed. Okay. Was there any reason, just out of curiosity, to shift this that way and get that out of that
Yes,
zone?
we're locating the fire feature and this pop out centered on the
Got it.
opening, kind of right on the curb of the building.
Understood. Okay. All right, those are my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. So for the plaster materials
Yes.
on the samples, you show different directions of the
Correct. yeah.
pattern. So is there like certain patterns or how will you do it and
Ye-
what's the scale of it?
Yes, let me go to the rendering. If I zoom in. So it would be like a 2-foot square, kind of repeating horizontal vertically.
And another question is regarding the gas heater.
Mhm.
So compared, my focus is more about the location, the direction. So on the diagram showing the electric ones, you showed it perpendicular to the edge, but on with the gas ones, you still propose to be only along the edge.
Right.
So is it possible, like why is that? And is it possible to have the gas one to be perpendicular.
Have the gas located on the,
Mhm.
the
The grid.
linear.
Yeah.
These gas heaters, the way the throw is, they're more efficient throwing linearly from the side. We could explore having them mounted on the linear. I think we could work either direction. This specific heater has a it has a shield. I'm going to go to the detail that allows for a minimal clearance. There you can see that shield, which gives us a minimal clearance to combustibles. I do not know that is functional with mounting directly below. So they may have to hang down off rods. And I think actually they would, once we get up, if we're up in this higher area, we'd have to hang them down on, some rods. So I think they'd be less aesthetic, because now you have these things hanging down in space. So having them mounted on the posts, they're a little more concealed.
Don't you also have hanging fans and light
Yes,
fixtures
the
as
other
well?
issue is we'd have to adjust our lighting and fans. We have those currently mounted on the center of each of these posts, rafters. So that would adjust the lighting layout. That's one of the main drivers.
I understand. Thank you.
Terrific. I mean, the change is so significant here, especially the regularity of the whole shape around the edge, the rounded corner. So all of the steel members can be in the same relationship all the way through. I guess you might have lost a little space, but you certainly did improves the whole look of the place, including outside, inside, whatever. It's a terrific improvement. I only have one. Well, let me say one issue I'm concerned about is the raising of the glass behind. If you really look in section, somebody walking by on the outside around the perimeter will be sort of very visible, and people inside, their heads will be quite visible to the outside. Also, maybe it improves the character of the inside a bit if you had diffused glass there instead of clear glass. In that situation, it becomes a little more private on the inside, may improve the character of the inside in terms of the character of the restaurant. And I don't understand exactly why it's so necessary to have it immovable rather than a fixed glass.
I think the concept is just having, on a windy day, being able to raise that up to get more wind protection and not have the space feel too enclosed. So if that glass was fixed up at 6 feet, it feels a little more of an enclosed space. Whereas if we can lower that down to the we'd be at 4.5 feet. All that would be the fixed height all day long. It just feels more open to the space.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, the same manufacturer who's doing our patio, and I think I've explained they do a lot of high-end hotels, Four Seasons, Nobu, Ritz-Carlton. They installed these operable windows in my Newport Beach location. We actually have 3 panels, so they're stacked in cohesion, and they can come up with a remote. They can come up and stop and start at any location, but it's really a wow factor for the guest. If this part of the banquette says it's a little breezy, a little windy, can you raise that up? It's really elegant. It's really nice. And it's the guests really appreciate it. So we'd love to move forward with this. It would be a lot less expensive for us to
For
just
sure.
do a simple windscreen.
Yeah.
But this is something we'd like to implore you all to let us keep as a feature. It's safe. I've had it in place in my Newport Beach store for 4 or 5 years. We installed it during COVID, and the guests really do enjoy it. And it is a wow factor. As far as the color of the tint of the glass, we can tint the glass, but we really would like to keep the operable windows. It's a lot more of a wow factor than the cheap plastic shades that come down and can enclose a patio. These are really state of the art, and so I'd like to, if you want to see the operable windows in my Newport Beach location, we have them on the website, but we'd like to strongly ask your permission to keep these.
Well, I did say in the character of the restaurant, so you're answering that directly. But does your other location have people walking sort of immediately adjacent to the outside as well?
No, these are on the perimeter of the patio, but in our Tustin Irvine store, we do. There's a sidewalk on the other side.
Mhm.
So the
And you
windows
don't-
act differently, though. They slide horizontally as opposed to vertically.
Mhm.
But these windows, they have enough framing around them where it's not just a clear glass that you're going to walk into and you're not going to see it. They're very noticeable with very, high-end polished aluminum framing around the glass.
So
So
the frame is all the way around.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's not just a clear piece of
No.
glass coming up.
No.
And all of these sit on top of a wall that's going to be there all the time anyway. It's not like someone's going to be walking and this is going to lift on them, right?
Yeah.
They'd have to be sitting on top of the wall, I think.
The bottom panel sits, it doesn't move, it doesn't operate. It's the subsequent ones
Ah,
behind.
Okay.
So they can stack in two pieces like we're doing, or three pieces like in my Newport location. And once again, they can, just with the remote control, you can bring each panel section up, start it, stop it in any desired height or location. But they are very noticeable. Nobody's going to run into them with the framing around them.
Mhm. Okay,
So
it's your choice
Thank
on
you.
that one. You know,
Appreciate that.
I certainly don't have any problem with the look, and we'll check out the wow factor
I look
at
forward
some
to it.
point.
Look forward to it.
As
Thanks.
soon as you get it done.
Thanks for letting us expound upon it.
Sure,
So
sure.
Appreciate it.
A
Sure,
follow-up
no problem.
question on that.
Yeah.
So did you say that each of the glass panel can be controlled individually instead
Yes.
of like the entire perimeter goes up and down?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And another question is about the shade, the drop-down shade. Does it go all the way down to the low wall or it stops at the glass level?
That would go to the low wall. That it would have the ability, likely it would not generally do that. It's just for sun shading and it would not have to go all the way down to shade the diners
Is it inside the glass or outside?
inside the glass. It would
Okay,
be
Yes,
an
that's
it's
inside
inside,
shade.
shows that.
And you can start it and stop it, same with the remote control. It's not hardwired. You can just stop it and start it at any point in time. And it is also in sections. So you can bring one sunshade down if it's sun directly in one table's eyes and the others can remain up.
Sounds cool. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So to take it one step further, kind of anecdotally, you would say that if somebody comes and sits in this particular seat and talks to the waiter and says, could you lower this behind here? This is something that you can do with them. Could you lower the shade? Could you
Correct.
And all
deal with it that
remotely,
way?
all
That's
remotely,
about-
so you wouldn't have to disturb the patrons that are sitting
Correct. You
there.
can have some people that say, hey, the sun's too hot on me. Can you please lower the
Yeah.
shade? Whereas someone 2 tables over in a
Yeah,
different bay
might
may
be-
say,
Just,
I enjoy the
Okay.
sun on my back. So you can
Good.
tailor the experience
Uh-huh.
to the patrons.
Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, one of the other sort of major issues that you're showing the fabric on the underside, right, without too much detail yet, I don't think, for how the mechanism is going to work with that.
Which fabric?
The fabric on the sloping,
That's fixed fabric.
that's all fixed.
We've gone away
fabric.
from the retractable, so now it's just
Okay,
fixed in place.
that should be a lot
100%.
better.
Yeah.
But the fabric is below the steel, so it's kind of consistent all the way through the space.
Correct.
But what happens during the rain? Where does
There
it-
is an integral gutter, kind of here. So there's an
I got
integral
it.
gutter
That's what
drains
that
down.
is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Okay, all right. So, and then that's taken down the column points?
correct, into those columns and then drains
Uh-huh.
out into it.
And
drains.
where does it go from there?
I would be drain into a underground drains. We'll have to tap into a drain system.
Each one taps into,
I'm not sure if it's every column, but it will drain into.
yet to be worked out a bit, huh?
Correct.
In
That's in
detail.
currently in the plumbing engineer's court
Oh,
at the moment.
okay, that's good. Just one, it's sort of a silly detail, but you
Oh, it's a big
have
one.
the plaster, the color, the pattern plaster coming all the way down to the front and next to the door.
Yes.
Right? From that panel that is consistent and not brought forward. So it comes up to the door, the framework around that. What happens at that point? Now, this particular drawing shows a vertical, right?
Mhm.
Is that going to extend out to the outside with a reveal or something? How is that done?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a jam there. So you have the aluminum storefront jam, the plaster will return back to that jam and you would have a reveal between the plaster and the jam and a reveal joint there.
Just a detail.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes.
Solves the problem.
Yes.
The only thing I would say is really sort of talking to Simon about this is not the most attractive corner. Wouldn't it be nice to make it a little more attractive for this restaurant? The planter outside in the middle, there's one that is a built-in planter, and then there's a movable planter, for lack of a better way to describe it. And it's really not so attractive. So if there were another built-in planter, which might be possible there, could we say we would like some improvements to the general planting and aesthetics of the passageway out to the restaurant from the other portion is there some possibility we put a recommendation to consider that?
I think I'll go ahead and step in on this. We do have Simon representative, I believe, that can speak with us further. But if I can just touch on this, I think there might be a concern about creating an additional egress issue, adding any type of planters in this area. I know that they systematically go around the shopping center and upgrade their plants, and they have a landscaper that again, make sure it's top quality. If there's something that is out of
Absolutely,
place,
no doubt.
they do
I'm just
take
trying to bring a bit of that out to the edge.
definitely. I caution only because we don't want to restrict access
Yes,
and traffic
it
around
is.
the area.
But I think to me, it appeared there's enough space. So if you said you'll address that to the Simon and the landscaper and see if that's a possibility. But I want the restaurant to respond. Is that something that they would be interested in as well? The other part of that is that Anthropology has their signage built into wall that is really part of this restaurant's outside. It's a sort of a permanent in the wall kind of a signage. But how does that work with Simon and where signage can be on a particular wall like that?
Definitely. And again, initially this was all part of one space, and the cafe that was part of or integral to the retail space. And so that's why the signage had to continue to run for Anthropology. It meets the signage requirements for Sanford Shopping Center. And we have actually taken the corner space and made it our own. But I don't think Simon has any issues or the tenant with the placement of the current signage for Anthropology.
So it's a hard edge wall coming down there. So I was wondering if it wouldn't be possible for you to have some kind of planters up against that wall and sort of lead into the entryway here. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, this space is really outside of our purview and part of the other lease space, and I don't think we can
fiddle with that.
Yeah.
Well,
From
our
aesthetic standpoint, I'm on board with what you're describing. I think JC as well would love the beautification of the building.
And I do think it's beyond the scope of this intended project.
If you can't do it, you can't do it.
Yeah, but looking at Simon over here, maybe that's something to think about in the future.
Definitely.
Yes, I would hope that you might take the case, since we'll just have it in the minutes of our meeting here.
Sure.
And continue to put some pressure, because it certainly is, I think, to your benefit to have a better access from all directions, now that you've solved the issue of the sidewalk dimension. That's sort of the next step.
And that's
the
definitely
process.
something we can discuss with planning staff
Yeah.
separately or moving forward on other projects and just for the shopping center in a whole.
Yeah, I mean, don't have any question at all about the plantings at the shopping center. They're spectacular just every year, better and better every time. So if that could be continued, that'd be great.
Great, thank you.
Uh, I think that's it for me, very pleased, looking for this getting started. Would hope we can vote it in today if that's possible. Yeah.
I don't have any further questions either. No, all set. Thank you very much for your presentation. You may sit. At this point, we close the public portion of the meeting, and we do have an internal discussion on our end. I'd be happy to kick us off. So far, I think that they addressed all of our questions and concerns. I'm very, like as David said, very pleased with the canopy redesign. I think that really is quite an improvement. I think that the fixed canopies overhead is actually going to also be a benefit. I'm actually very happy to see that gutter detail. It was a thoughtful detail that I think is really important. In a perfect world, I'd love to see planters all the way around the outside. But I think that addition of the small planter is really going to benefit that corner. And again, per David's comments, that will add some greenery and life to that corner that was previously lacking. So I'm very excited about all of that. I do have continuing concerns about that fire pit. So just please keep that in mind if you get to the point where you're sitting there looking at it going, we need a little more, whether it's a cap on top or something, or a little bit more of a buffer. Just please keep that in mind as you guys are actually doing construction. I think that will be kind of important. That's it for my comments, really. Thank you very much for the presentation. Looking forward to it.
No, thank you so much for coming back again. Give us a great redesign and presentation. To appreciate the effort that you work with the shopping center and maintain the 8-foot free clearance walkway. And also, I do appreciate the redesign of the canopy. I think remove the existing and build a fixed one is an improvement for this corner. As far as the materials, I think it meets the high quality design standards. As far as the gas versus the electric ones, although we prefer the electric ones, however, I think in your case, we understand there are some financial restrictions, and I do appreciate that you make the efforts and explore the alternatives. And I think, to me, I think it's reasonable solution to have the gas heater outside. And also, when we say sustainable design, it's not only like gas versus electrics, it's all other aspects related to the same issue, like material selections and water conservations and all other many things. I think you did a great job on sustainable design. And thank you so much, and can't wait to see it being built.
Just ditto to all your feelings there. I don't think I have to add any more. Just really pleased to see this and hope it goes ahead as swiftly and you have taken care of almost all of your problems and they don't become too severe. I guess that the one thought that I had to continue is we don't look too much at the surface of the materials outside, but I know there are some utility issues in the ground that you're going to have to deal with, and I have no doubt that you'll do a good job as much best you can on something like that. Perhaps painting or whatever the covers are so that they're less observable, as you walk into the space, so the quality can be consistent throughout as much as possible. So thanks for really making those significant changes to this. It probably reduces the seating a little bit, but it's just incredibly different the way it comes now, and look forward to that whole corner now kind of being just a terrific looking, and the materials are excellent choice, as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you, guys. All right, on that note, I would like to make a motion to approve the project proposed to the Director of Planning and Development Services based on the findings in attachment B and subject to the conditions of approval in attachment C. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Okay, we've got both seconds, and can we get a call for vote, please?
Yeah, yes. Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 302. Board Member Joe Jarth and Adcock absent.
And as a final note, I would just like to say thank you. I know that sometimes these redesigns can be a little stressful and difficult, and obviously I understand chomping at the bit to get construction going. So thank you guys for your time and your thoughtfulness and your responses. It is noted. So looking forward to it. Take care. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Chair, board members, thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you all. Appreciate you guys very much. And thanks for your input. And we're happy with the design. And right now I'm thrilled. I'm
Great.
thrilled and excited not to have to come back, but thank you all for your input and your expertise and so excited, just very excited. So thank you all so much.
Congratulations. Love it. Love the exuberance. All right, on that note, we're only at 9:15, so let's power through if that's all right, unless anyone needs a quick 5-minute break. 5-minute break. Let's do a quick 5-minute break. We'll come back at 9:20. Get a little coffee. 9:20. I think we are ready to come back to order. We're going to continue on to action item number 3, a study session on conceptual site layouts and circulation for the Cubberley Master Plan at 4,000 Middlefield Road. CEQA status, master plan will undergo CEQA review. That will turn over to staff.
Good morning, Chair Rosenberg,
Morning.
Vice Chair Chin, and Board Member Hirsch. I'm Amanda Dummel, Assistant Director for Community Services, and I'm joined today by Kristen O'Kane, Director of Community Services. We are also joined virtually by our master planning consultants, Concordia from New Orleans, Stephen Bingler and Elizabeth Chen, who will introduce themselves fully when they present in the coming slides. We are here today to host a study session to share with you an update on our project and the 3 conceptual site layouts and circulation plans for the Cubberley Master Plan located at 4,000 Middlefield Road. Next slide, please. Before we share with you the conceptual plans, we want to provide you a brief background on the project, since this is our first meeting with you on this project. A comprehensive background summary of actions to date is attachment A in your packets, but we will briefly cover a few key highlights now. The Cubberley site is a total of 35 acres. The city owns 8 acres and leases much of the remaining 27 acres from PAUSD, which is the Palo Alto Unified School District. In October of 2024, PAUSD and the City Council approved a MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding outlining future conditions, including a land purchase of 7 additional acres by the city. This is contingent on a successful bond measure by voters in November 2026. In December 2024, the city initiated a new master planning process, including building upon the previous 2019 master plan. Next slide, please. Concordia is leading the master planning process again, which is a great benefit to the city as they led the 2019 effort. So they have extensive knowledge of the Cubberley site, our community, and have established relationships with staff. The city is also contracted with FM3 to lead the polling efforts and Lou Edwards Group to lead ballot strategy. City Council also established an ad hoc committee to review and advise staff on efforts related to polling and development of a ballot measure, including polling, financial and revenue forecasting, master planning, and community outreach. Next slide, please. A great deal of work has been completed to date on our work plan. Some of the milestones are listed here. February 18th, the City Council had their visioning session for the Cubberley site. March 19th, we hosted our first community meeting. April 21st, the City Council gave direction on poll number 1, which was then released April 28th, and then reviewed the results with City Council on June 9th. June 12th, we hosted our second community meeting for the master planning process. June 19th, we visited the Public Art Commission. June 24th, we went to the Parks and Recreation Commission. And most recently, July 9th, we visited the Planning and Transportation Commission. So the next set of milestones coming up through just September, otherwise this will be a very long list, as we are meeting with you all here today. And then next we will be going to City Council on August 18th. September 17th, we'll be hosting our 3rd and final community meeting for the master plan. And then September 23rd, we'll be going back to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Next slide, please. In your packets, you will find a full summary of community meetings 1 and 2 that describe in more detail the meeting activities as well as more broader details on the results. What I'd like to highlight briefly on this slide are the key themes and priorities that we heard from the meetings. So you have more information top of mind to help frame the presentation that you're about to hear from Concordia for their designs. The key themes in meeting 1 were flexibility, inclusivity, sustainability, and affordability. The top priorities the community shared are wanting multi-purpose spaces, wellness access, green space, and community gathering areas. At meeting number 2, which was held on June 12th, over 130 community members attended and reviewed the 3 concept designs and gave feedback through group activities and individual ratings on layout, access, and the site experience. The summary report for meeting 2 shows There's a strong preference for partially underground parking and concerns about the above ground parking structure. General preference for new construction and some support for partial renovation if it results in significant cost savings. Emphasis on separating the bike and pedestrian paths for safety, and appreciated the direct bike connection from Nelson to Middlefield. Strong support for public gathering spaces that encourage community interaction and appreciate large, flexible open spaces. The overall ratings were the Community Lights Concept 1, the diagonal, the best. It scored the highest across the 6 evaluation categories, and Concept 3, the linear, followed closely in second place. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth and Stephen from Concordia to introduce themselves and share with you the 3 concept designs for the site that were shared at the June 12th community meeting. At the end of their presentation, they also are going to show a few slides showing a draft concept that is starting to reflect the input gathered at the community meeting and the recent commission meetings. Elizabeth?
I'll start. I'm Stephen Vingler, CEO of Concordia. Delighted to be here and delighted to have this discussion.
And I'm Elizabeth Chen. I'm an architect at Concordia and the project manager for this Coverly project. Okay, and we just love to thank you for this opportunity to get y'all's feedback on the Coverly project. On the next slide, you'll see, okay, so we are going to be presenting 3 concept designs that we presented at community meeting number 2. And then we are also going to share with you a follow-up of where we went after the feedback from that community meeting and after some of the comments that we received from the Planning and Transportation Commission. So on the screen now, you'll see a visual representation of where we started the design process. All 3 of the concept designs that we presented at the community meeting have an equal amount of outdoor space, indoor space, and parking area. As you can see from this bar graph, the first bar graph shows the number of square feet that the existing site has. And then the second bar graph shows what we are proposing. So you can see that our concept designs, all 3 of them, increase all kinds of space. It's an increase of outdoor space, it's an increase of indoor space, and it's an increase of parking capacity. On the next slide, you'll see a breakdown of just the 3 concept designs that we presented at the community meeting. They were called the diagonal concept design, the grid, and the linear. I'll go over those in the next slides. And for each concept design, we'll go over things like building massing, the relationship of outdoor space, promenades, and pedestrian, bike, as well as vehicular circulation features. Also, for each concept design, there are 3 options. We wanted to make sure that we were exploring cost accountability through these 3 alternatives of options. So for each concept design, you will see an option for all new construction. That means demolition of the existing structures plus new construction. That would include partially underground parking. The second option for each concept design will show partial renovation of 3 of the existing structures and also partially underground parking. And then the third option for each concept design will show above ground structured parking in lieu of that partially underground parking. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little overview of the graphic representation that you'll see on the next slides. Anywhere where you see a white mass, that will indicate new construction. Anywhere where you see a tan mass, that indicates a proposed renovated building. That's for the design option number 2 for each scheme. And then anywhere that you see a dark gray mass, that indicates the above ground structured parking. And then that little circle next to it will indicate that speed ramp, just to be able to get your cars up and down. In all of the areas where you will see that dark gray structured parking, that indicates that it is 4 floors tall. And then further on in the presentation, you'll also see a red or orange and yellow lines. Those indicate vehicle routes in red, and then major bike and pedestrian routes in orange, and then dedicated pedestrian only routes indicated in that yellow. For the schemes that include partially underground parking, that's shown in a dotted line. And then the lighter gray buildings are existing buildings that are not part of this project scope. And then you'll also see protected existing trees. By no means are these the only trees that are proposed as part of the concept plans, but they're the ones that we definitely know are protected. We know exactly which ones they are and where they are. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the different concept option alternatives. So the new construction, again, that includes any white masses that indicate new construction with the dotted partially underground parking shown, flanking middle fields. And then for the partial renovation option, the 3 buildings that we have worked with our structural engineer to indicate as possibilities to renovate are the pavilion, which is the big flex space that has gyms in it. That's where we hold all of our community meetings. The theater, as well as building I. Building I is the only 2-story building that's sort of at the center of campus. For the meeting, for community meeting 2, we were showing structured parking sort of in this back location here. As you can see from future slides, we have rethought some of that parking, but for the 3 concept design options that you'll see in the slides to follow, you'll see that structured parking in that location. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll just move on to showing you the concept designs that we presented in meeting number 2. So the first, again, is called the diagonal scheme. And I'll go over some of the similar features that you'll see in the 3 concept design options. In this scheme, you can see these linear new construction buildings. Those are shown at 70 feet wide. That's a really convenient width for a building bay because it's flexible and adaptable for many kinds of functions, including things like, classrooms, even parking or theaters, performance spaces. So it can host a wide range of use and program types. And then you'll see the larger squarer mass, and that will be indicating the recreation and wellness center. This is sort of an idiosyncratic kind of space just because it doesn't fit in that 70-foot wide bay. So in all of the plans, you will see those 2 types of buildings. Okay, so the diagonal scheme, the main design move is that it makes a design feature out of connecting the existing bike route on Nelson Drive and connecting it through the site to the middle field existing bike and pedestrian route. So that's why you see that diagonal that really carries the bike routes down from Nelson all the way to Middlefield. And then the buildings also sort of enhance that diagonal. A lot of the positive responses that we've gotten from this scheme are that the outdoor spaces are a really a generous scale to the buildings. And people also tended to like the connection, that direct connection with the bike routes. The next page, please. So this you can see in a 3D view. You can see that the one-story buildings are facing Middlefield, and then the two-story buildings are more in the back of the site facing the fields. You'll also see the protected trees that I mentioned before. And one thing to note here, and for all of the concept designs actually, is that all of the setbacks and maximum building heights that are designated in the zoning ordinance, we're following those guidelines here. And in fact, our setbacks are a little more generous than necessary. The closest that we come to an existing building is that in Charleston, in the Charleston Shopping Center. The required setback there is 10 feet, but we're exceeding that, and it's closer to 45 feet over there. Okay, next slide, please. And then this is a view that shows that second option of renovation. So then you can see those tan buildings, the pavilion, the theater, and building I would stay, and those would be renovated. When we say renovated, we mean that we would gut the buildings down to their structures, and then they would get all new mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems, new finishes, etc. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is that third option that shows above ground parking, shown in the darker gray towards the upper left hand side of the page. We wanted to show the impact of parking on the site. And again, just a note that this does meet the setback and height limitations, although you can see that it has a greater impact on the site. Okay, next slide, please. The second design concept that we presented to community meeting 2 was called the grid concept. I'll spend a little less time on this in the next one just because it had fewer positive cumulative comments. But the main design move in this one is the network of promenades for bike and pedestrian use. It has more courtyards, but they're a little smaller. And just a reminder that the 3 concept designs that we're showing have all of the same rough square footages of outdoor and indoor space. Next slide, please. And this shows a 3-dimensional view of the new construction version. Next slide, please. And then again, the option 2 that shows the renovation of the theater, the pavilion, and building I. And then the next slide shows that third option with the structured parking, again, in a similar location towards the back of the site. Okay, on the next slide, you'll see the third concept design. We call this the linear scheme. And again, I'll spend a little less time on it. But what I will note is some of the positive responses that we got from this scheme include that it celebrates this outdoor amenity space. That center area that you see labeled Grand Promenade with surrounded in orange lines, that is a generous, open, outdoor amenity space, and it's an inviting gesture that invites people in from Middlefield as well as from the campus. It's a great place for community interaction. And then you can see on the next slide the new construction version with that central community amenity space. And the next slide shows the renovation option with the theater, pavilion, and building I renovated. And the next slide then shows that third option with the structured parking. Okay, next slide, please. So after analyzing all of the comments from the community meeting, we wanted to respond to the feedback that we got and consolidate the comments and the positive and negative responses that we got for all of the schemes and proceed with one concept design that we will further develop. So we decided to go with the diagonal scheme as a basis, but also feature a community gathering space similar to the linear scheme that's inviting for community interaction, that's multi-generational and accessible. And we also wanted to incorporate some of the efficient flow diagrams that were featured in the grid layout. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is the concept plan that we are working with that incorporates that feedback. As you can see, the diagonal promenade is still the main design feature, which celebrates that bike and pedestrian routes. It's widened now so that it features a little more of a generous space that welcomes community into that promenade and enhances interaction. You can see that we have shown separated pedestrian and bike paths. So the bike paths are shown in orange, and then those dedicated pedestrian-only paths are shown in yellow. We also wanted to respond to a big feedback item of how the fields are so in such high demand. We heard a lot of pressure points about addressing parking and also the distribution of drop-off to serve those to serve field access. So in that red line, you can see that we are developing the vehicle access points and circulation routes. Along with that, we're still showing the partially underground parking that's shown in a dotted line closer to Middlefield. This is slightly smaller because a lot of parking is then distributed to the back of the site where you see that label called tennis on the roof and parking. So what that would mean is at-grade parking with tennis courts on the roof of that parking. By putting that lot there, we are responding to just the high demand for parking for the fields. We're also adding the mobility hub that you see in the top right. That can be for a parent drop off for a soccer practice, etc. And then cars can then go through the back parking, connecting to the existing parking lot to the left of that, and then cars can circulate back down to Middlefield. Okay. All right. So another thing to note is that we are incorporating the feedback from community meeting number 1, which focused on programming, and we're distributing programming and activities and uses with different locations on the site. So on the left, you can see performing arts, visual arts, makerspace and workshops to the left of the diagonal. And then on the right side, you can see that there's a lot of athletics and activities. So with the tennis, the recreation, wellness, and fitness areas, with education and enrichment facing Middlefield, and then rental and flexible space for tenants sort of closer to the diagonal, still on the right side. Okay. Another thing to note is that the diagonal promenade connects to the Middlefields promenade. facing Middlefield. And that promenade on Middlefield is a protected bike and pedestrian route that's a little set back from the street. We've heard feedback that Middlefield is quite busy and that pedestrians and bicyclists could use a little bit of a respite. So as they approach the site, they can walk or bike within that tree-lined promenade throughout the site. Okay, next slide, please. And then you can see this updated 3D view. We also wanted to address some feedback about the presence along Middlefield. We were hearing that some people wanted more presence on Middlefield just to show activity and engagement for this important community center. So we're also showing in the little triangle that's formed between the diagonal and Middlefield, we're showing a place marker of some sorts, and we would love to further develop this place marker with stakeholders such as this board, as well as community members, and how we can show a presence on Middlefields. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the developed concept design showing that option 2 for the renovated Pavilion Theater and Building I. And the next slide shows that in 3 dimensions. Okay, and then next slide, please. This slide shows a vignette of what that promenade could look like. So I mentioned that the pedestrian and bike paths were dedicated to avoid some of the safety clashes that people were telling us about. So hugging the buildings along that promenade, you can see that pedestrian path. It could be covered by canopies on the building. People really love the canopies and covered and shaded portions of the existing Coverly site. And then an amenities parklet flanks that pedestrian path. That could be filled with things like bike racks, picnic tables, and other amenities that support the programming inside of the buildings. And then next to that is the bike path. And that's wide enough for 2-way traffic. And then in the center is that recreational outdoor space. That is the area that could be used for community interaction, picnics, frisbee, etc. Just a publicly inviting place to hang out. And then next slide, please. Yeah, and this just shows that same that same promenade from eye level. So you can see some of the activities that could go on there. And then we also wanted to show that this could be a really shaded space and an inviting space and accessible for all ages. Okay. And I think that's the last slide, and I'll hand it back to the CSD team.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. The next steps in our master planning process include collecting and analyzing the feedback that we'll receive today from this board, along with the input that we've gathered this summer, including the June 12th community meeting, the June 24th PRC meeting, and the July 9th Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. Following these summer meetings, several key milestones remain. At the 3rd and final community meeting on September 17th, Concordia will present one refined concept plan for additional public input. This will ultimately lead to their final presentation to the community and city council on December 8th, which will include the proposed master plan, cost estimates, and phasing scenarios. Next slide, please. Okay, we have shared a lot of information with you today. So to recap what staff are requesting from the ARB, providing feedback on the 3 conceptual designs, as well as we'd love any thoughts about the updated designs that you just saw, including the same aspects the community has evaluated, such as arrival and parking, pedestrian circulation, building scale and physical space organization, landscape and green space organization, balance of buildings and green space, being a good neighbor to the surrounding neighborhoods and local businesses. Additionally, based on the new progress made on the concept designs, we'd be interested to hear your feedback on renovation versus new construction and the triangular green spaces at the promenade entry points, which we can pull those slides back up. Any additional comments or general feedback that can help inform the refinement of the preferred concepts are also encouraged and appreciated. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. So thank you so much for your time and your attention. We now invite your comments, your feedback, and discussion. Director O'Kane and I, as well as Elizabeth and Stephen, are available to answer your questions. I'll ask Mr. Taverna to go back to the previous slide. We can keep up the feedback questions and then as well as navigate to any of the concept slides as helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for the thorough background information as well. I do always think that it is helpful to get some of that background information. Just checking, because this is a study session, we did not do disclosures. I'm wondering if that is required.
I don't believe that is required, but we would welcome it if there is
Okay.
anything to share.
If you guys are okay with it, let's go ahead and do disclosures, even though it's not necessarily required. I disclose I visited the site.
I disclose I visited the site, and I'm quite familiar with the site because I send the kids to this property for different classes and events.
I played badminton there in high school. Go ahead, David.
So I was a part of the first study where I was a table host and helping the consultants on their presentation. I visited the site numerous times during that time, but I also have visited the site recently and actually to be part of the second study that's also in progress here and described. I also want to say that I met with Mr. Dingler privately, had a nice dinner together, and had a telephone conversation recently the other day about the project.
Great. Well,
Okay.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
service. I mean, really, it's great. Do we have public comments on this as well?
Yeah, through the chair, I've received no public comments cards, but I do have one public speaker via Zoom.
Okay, and I'm looking to staff. Is now the appropriate time to take the public comments? Okay, great. Then let's go ahead and bring the person on Zoom into the conversation, please.
Right, give me 1 second as I pull
Thank you
them up.
very much.
Our first speaker is going to be Elizabeth A.
Good morning, Elizabeth. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Alexis, Alexis, and I am somebody who's been interested in Coverly for many years. I led the effort to not sell the property to the community college, which was a nice thought, but I thought this space was very important. So first, I want to thank everybody for their time. Attention to this, I think, is just the most amazing asset on, and now I think it's beginning to be appreciated. I am happy to start to see this thing being fleshed out. Because I'm starting to think one of my primary uses right now is Coverly, other than just being a neighbor, is that I'm a volunteer with the Friends of the Palo Alto Library. I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I was just in there volunteering yesterday, and I was starting to think about how our organization would function with a new Coverly, and it is really helpful to start to see some names and stuff being put to buildings. I just want to throw out the things that I have experienced as somebody who takes in donations and somebody who helps give away some books. First, I'm not sure if everybody appreciates the number of volunteers, the number of books, the money that's given to the city. It's really an incredible organization that's been around since 1938. But for us, for example, like I think we really need to have a really accessible, really visible drop-off space. People are donating books and they need to know that they can donate books. And they're often coming in with, incredibly heavy books, which we're, often even having to use hand trucks and everything. And that's happening almost every day of the week, every week. So, right now our site is split up among 3 or 4 different sites, which, it takes extra volunteer efforts driving everything around. It would be amazing. I mean, I'm so excited about the idea that we could have everything together, but it's also starting to throw into people's heads as you're thinking about this, that in many ways we're a storefront, kind of like a retail location, and how that would work, along with some place that people could have some short-term parking for that. Anyway, very excited to see some visibility on Middlefield. I think that could really transform this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. I believe we have a second speaker,
Yes,
either Eli or Ellie.
yeah. Our next speaker is Ellie R. You may now speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you'll
All
have, please state and spell your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
So yeah, it's Eli, E-L-I, and then Robles, R-O-B-L-E-S. So good morning, esteemed members of the Architectural Review Board. My name is Eli Robles, representing NorCal Carpenters, Local 405 in San Jose. As you assess the vision for Cavalry's transformation, I urge you to consider not just the aesthetics and function of the built environment, but the ethics embedded into its foundation. Strong labor standards are a cornerstone of responsible architecture. They ensure that the very people shaping our public spaces are treated with fairness, dignity, and safety. When we integrate prevailing wages, apprenticeship standards, and safe job sites into this project, we are building more than walls and gardens. We're cultivating trust, equity, and community resilience. These values should echo in every detail from blueprint to brick. Let Cavalry stand as a model not only of architectural excellence, but of principled development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
And through the chair, there's no more raised hands, so that concludes public comment from Zoom, and I
Great.
received no cards.
Okay, with that, we will close the public comment section of this review. At this time, we don't have an applicant rebuttal, so it's basically, we're turning this over to the board for questions to the applicant or staff. So any questions and comments? I'm looking at David since he's got the most sort of meat on the bone over here. So why don't you take it away and start with some of your questions and
All right,
comments?
thank you. First, I wrote a little piece here, which I'd like to read. It's a welcomed opportunity, and thank you very much for bringing this to us. In the first place, we don't often seem to get to see things early in the process, and it's something which I personally have more interest in for projects that come into the board, that we get to see and study them and add whatever the board ultimately decides, which is, we don't make a decision early on, but at least we should see projects like this. So it's, as a study session, this is a great thing for us to be part of. These sketched plans were based on a program created by, well, if you add everybody together, it's a little hard to figure out who came for the first session and who came for the second session, but it's got to be over 200 people really by the time you add them together. It might be closer to 300 people, who have been participating in this from the beginning. Two different year periods in between there as well. So the potential future uses of Cubberley, certainly we must add to this list, if they are not mentioned so far, is the many present tenants who have depended on the facility for years. To name a few, the preschoolers, special ed programs, Palo Alto History Archives, the artists in residence there, special ed programs, Palo Alto History Archives, I said it already, the FOPAL, which that mentioned already, which is scattered throughout, the Chinese Library, Children's Symphony, which is one exciting thing that you see when you go there if they're practicing pieces, the dance studios, the many athletic programs such as the pickup fly football or the springtime community gathering of all the mini soccer players who come out on the field, which is a spectacular experience actually. And I happened to be there during that, starting from the little tiniest kids kicking the ball and learning that simple idea that maybe as grown-ups we know more about, but the kids don't at that age. The Senior Health and Wellness Program, which uses both indoor space and outdoor space. So there's very, very many culturally important facilities, all with different spatial needs. And I'm pleased to note that the latest diagram shows some of the use facilities because that's really critical now. But it's going to be an important task for Concordia in liaison with the city to refine and prioritize the new list that will be created here. Publicly preferred uses, which have been determined in the studies that we've had, are really critical to moving forward because they establish the priorities of the program here. But it's important to determine which activities can be housed in spaces that are compatible with each other and to consider how the future growth can be part of the plan. And I noticed there's some empty buildings there that are assumed to be for the future in the description that they've provided. And perhaps most importantly, to determine how construction can be phased based on the retention of active tenants. Cubberley is a dynamic, diversified community gem. So we have to be careful to preserve and enhance its uniqueness. So if you think about that, that really makes you think in terms of how it can be phased in some way that you can continue activities there. And that affects a priority in terms of what buildings would be built first and how the remainder of the campus is remained for those who are there. But I hope we don't run roughshod over some of what goes on there now and lose that opportunity to keep the variety and interest that is presently there in Cubberley. Finally, to think about this, I've from the point of view when this project was presented, I sort of thought that it's like the idea here is that now it's kind of a facility within a park or a park within a facility, and it's very different. It makes me think more about Rinconada than the present existing use of that space. The wonderful Rinconada. It's such a fabulous creation for this city. So the landscape becomes as important and the landscape usages become so as important. Now, if I could, I would like to ask a few questions then. Whether you both city and consultants have prioritized the project properly here. It seems that their first time that there was a study group, there were certain priorities, which were worker space, work, and the senior health facilities were the highest priority. And I hope that they are put into this project where they relate properly to the functions that would be near to them. And so, for example, the workers' space, I'm not using the right term there, but you know what I mean, I think. It's good. It's likely to be a growing facility. For that's what the first group really felt very strongly about that. And if you look at the graph of the number of people who voted for that, you'll see that that's very high up on the scale. I really haven't figured out which one is high up on the second category. But to take the community uses very seriously from that our work that was developed in the first and the second one, and make sure that they are emphasized in the final one, and decide actually as a priority how you put them into these structures that are shown, however we decide which one we prefer, so that they allow the facility to continue operating. So I think that actually you have done some of that now. I'd go back to that drawing a little bit later to put it up so that we could see how the program is inserted there. If you were to add below grade parking to that area, I think that's a very reasonable way of doing it. Stephen, you've suggested how that could work, and I agree very much with you that it's good if you could do it half a level down and arrange for that. And then if in the back of the site, it ends up that there's exposed parking, I would say you could find a way to make that work too, without it being the same system in the back. Hold on a second. Okay, so this question's really kind of answered. Will there be a program for the landscaping areas within the courtyards? You know, would that be part of your general design as it progresses? It's been a sort of a blank area, and you focused on this promenade idea, but I think you really have to program the open space. These are major courtyards. They include, luckily, many of the trees, but there have been some requests for an outdoor kind of amphitheater as part of this, and some other use facilities that would be part of the. And I think that my important comment here is staging, because there's no doubt that this is not going to happen when we look at this drawing and say, won't this be a nice thing in the future? It's not going to happen quite that quickly. There's going to be real priorities. Maybe only one building gets built at this time, and then the future, you're going to plan it for the future. So I think that maybe I'll stop at that, and then we get back to it. Then there's some preferences that I would like to describe later on, and let everybody else get in on this. Except to say, since we're going to be making a decision, I thought the diagonal scheme, as does PTC, I think that's would be my preferred scheme. And I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit later on, and let my cohorts here.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Very thoughtful comments. I'm gonna do a little bit differently than how David has been discussing so far, would you mind pulling up the recent site plan, your sort of latest and greatest version? I'd like to dig into that a little bit, if that's all right. If I understand correctly, you basically took this latest and greatest version from the elements of the base on the diagonal with elements from the linear and then some maybe minor features from the grid. Is that a correct understanding of how this final presentation was sort of put together?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And of course, this is sort of high level. We understand that, again, as David had mentioned, there's probably going to be a full landscape plan later. Obviously, we can't really get into that right away, right? So we're expecting that there'll be a little bit more fleshing out of all of that down the road. I did appreciate your promenade renderings. I thought that was very clear and really sort of a succinct explanation for what's going to be happening there. And a lot of appreciation for those little islands in between the bike path and the pedestrian path for like, exactly, for like the picnics and the bike benches and the bike parking and things like that. I will say, as we all know from every university in the country, yak trails will appear, as we lovingly call them. So have you guys planned at all for any of those potential points to try and promote certain areas where crossovers happen? Or are you just going to sort of embrace the natural pathing that people will tend to take? And by yak trails, just public, it's when pedestrians walk off path and they create a sort of a rut in the dirt because they all take the same path over and over again.
Well, as you know, a lot of college campuses are designed without the paths until people decide where they're going to walk, and then they put the concrete where people walk. So that's one approach. At this stage of the game, we think it's too early. We don't really know what's going to go where. And I want to pick up on that because we intentionally created the 70-foot bay because flexibility is key. What we're creating here is something that's going to be around for, let's call it 100 years, and so it's going to change. So our intention is to design the system in a modular way. I don't know yet whether it's going to be a 4-foot grid or a 5-foot grid. That probably comes maybe later in the architectural design. But we're designing at least with the understanding that anything could go anywhere, or things could be easily moved around if they need to be moved around to be more efficient and of more service to the community. Obviously, there are some things that don't move around very easily, like theaters and those kinds of things. But for the most part, programming is programming, and those sheetrock walls or maybe even movable partitions that are included in the architectural design could be moved around or reconfigured over the lifespan of this project in many different ways. So I just wanted to point out that inherent in this design, as you notice, we don't have a lot of little buildings. I mean, we're trying to have this extruded concept. Not unlike shopping centers have very generic proportions and very generic layouts because they know that over time the tenants are going to change and that kind of thing. So I wanted to point that out.
Appreciate that.
And to David's point, this is all about the people who are occupying those spaces, and we want to make it as easy and as fluid and as flexible as possible. We will take a shot in the master plan at what goes where, but 2 years from now, when a bond is passed and an architect is on board and the actual design starts to take place, my guess is that those uses will probably move around a little bit with a lot more study and a lot more probably some changes that will even happen over the next couple of years. So I think I really want to emphasize flexibility is key.
Okay.
And I also want to emphasize that on the parking, all the floors are flat. And for a reason, because as we all know, autonomous vehicles are on the rise, and so as we all know, as urban planners, parking is probably going to be in less demand in the future. parking spaces as individuals don't use autonomous vehicles or to get to where they are. That's why we've increased the number of mobility hubs. And we're also asking for your advice on parking. Right now, parking is a really complicated issue. And we don't have a requirement for parking from the zoning, but we're taking a shot at it. But you know, this is expensive space, and all the parking spaces that we're designing can be converted into other program space in the future. So we're making some assumptions that maybe this parking underground, partially submerged parking might end up being program space sometime in the future. So with all of those ideas of flexibility and adaptability, you know, we would love to get your feedback. And are we on the right track, or are there any things that you see that cause any kind of concerns or whatever?
So on that note, let's go back to that site plan again, please. So I have a couple of comments specifically on parking and some questions as well. So with the mobility spaces, I think that's a brilliant idea. We have a lot of areas where there's drop off and pickups, and especially using Uber and Lyft, and there's kids. I mean, I've dropped off my daughter's two closest friends play soccer there regularly. I've dropped them off there a few times myself, and sort of going into that back area and getting to that large soccer field that's to the left where the word says to Nelson Drive. There's that huge field right there. I appreciate you using the existing surface lot to remain, and I think that the concept of putting the tennis on the roof of a parking structure is brilliant, especially in the rear in that area. I would assume you would need fences. So those will have a visual impact and a height limit as well. But I think that overall, it's a very clever use of that space to sort of, for lack of a better phrase, to kill two birds with one stone. Is really increasing the parking in that area, especially surface parking, instead of having to dig down deep into the earth. And then creating a mobility hub right at the end there, I think, is a much safer way to sort of have some pickup without having people to necessarily enter into that parking space. Now, I'm not super clear if both of those red paths are two-way traffic or if everything sort of goes from this. Sorry, I'm going to draw on this now because I can't help myself. I'm not sure if everything's sort of one way going this direction and then it's one way going this direction, or if it's two in both ways. And you guys, I wouldn't assume, know that quite yet at this time.
That's right.
So just as sort of a concept. Sorry?
Yes, we don't know that yet.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I like the concept that there's this mobility hub here so that people in this recreation come out and hang out here, and are really sort of readily and easily able to be picked up. While I would like it to be moved down just a little farther, at the same time, then it would make those two too close and it would interfere with those trees. So it makes perfect logical sense to me, why it is located, the space that it's located. The fact that there are three, as just sort of a piece of my input, I guess I would say, is I'd clearly denote which one is which spot. So name them or something and make sure to have notable signage like this is Mobility Hub Duveneck, and the Duveneck Mobility Hub or whatever it is. And this is the Briones Mobility Hub or whatever, but having a name for them and having very clear signage. So when you've got a kid getting picked up from soccer practice by mom and dad, that they're able to say, I'm at this one, can you come get me? And that it's on Google Maps and things like that. And again, this applies regardless of how big these mobility hubs are, where they are. If you add an extra, I mean, you may even turn this into one back there as well, right? Just right next to the surface parking. So, I mean, it's definitely, I like the idea of these. I think they're super useful. And I would just say huge signage, like super obvious, and name them all individually. Okay. On that note, the half height parking lot here, understanding that may or may not be required by the time this all is said and done. What did I do? Did something. Hang on. Cancel. Sorry. I screwed up my screen here. I like the concept of it. And again, it's one of those that we'll see what's needed at the time. I think that this is sort of just a no-brainer, and then keeping this existing surface parking. You're going to have so much parking on this site, which I think is fantastic, especially knowing that it services that field right over there in the corner. So comments on that. And I am trying to sort of go around your arrival and parking down the list. Pedestrian circulation. I'm going to try and keep my comments a little bit shorter so that everyone has a chance to speak. The pedestrian pathing. I love this concept in the promenade. I think it's really quite lovely. And again, my comment about yak trails is actually not in opposition. I'm kind of fond of them. I think that people sort of forge their own path in that way, and that if the property decides to respond later, great. I would say that we've noticed from several universities that having sort of more star-shaped or diagonal patterns seems to be more cohesive. I can imagine someone here trying to get to the tennis court might just book it across the field, but we'll see. So hopefully there's that's one of the things that I really think is quite striking about this diagonal concept, is that you really do embrace that. And coming from this road, you look down and you're sort of staring straight down this promenade area, and you can see the field in the distance. I think all of it's working really nicely. I really do. So I think this was a great step in the right direction. Pedestrian circulation, I think, is fantastic. I've got no complaints there. I might try and figure out a biking path across that way. Just because I don't think that someone here is going to bike out and around or here, and maybe there needs to be some sort of cross across the back so that there's, again, another crossover. So I would just encourage another look at maybe a secondary bike path to get from sort of the promenade that direction as needed. But again, that's a little bit down the road and into the weeds, so I don't want to dwell on it. Building scale and organization. I think overall the building scale and organization, and if you can flip to the 3D model of this, if you don't mind, makes a lot of sense. I think that everything is sort of cohesive. I like that you've got these anchors at the end, right? They sort of hug the middle of this, and they sort of, the buildings coming down and lower into this really drives you into that promenade and sort of funnels you in that way, especially with this clipped corner here and that triangular element there. So I think all of that's working really nicely. I do have one concern that maybe you'd want some sort of through access here, whether it's an indoor or outdoor or a break between the two buildings, but having, someone walking from here, if they want to get over there, I mean, they could just go around, but it might be sort of nice to have a break in the middle. Just a thought. This triangular element, I think, can be a real showpiece. It's one of those that I would love to get public art involved in this and seeing what they can come up with. But I think that that's absolutely a place to be celebrated in sort of a welcoming post or sculpture or tree or or something there that really sort of welcomes you to this entry. But I love that this is sort of a clipped corner this way and a clipped corner this way. It really funnels you in to this space in sort of a joyous and welcoming way. So hats off for that as well. So that's landscape organization, balance of building and green space, I think is quite lovely. I do have one question, and it's about the pool. So I noticed in the earlier renderings, there weren't pools indicated in sort of the space planning, that we do now have one. Is this going to be a public use pool similar to Rinconada? Yes, I'm seeing the heads nodding. Yes. Okay, perfect. And so this will of course have a large fence all the way around it as well, correct? Yeah, I'm seeing heads nodding again. Okay. So for future rendering use, just as a point of comment, I would show those fences along the tennis courts and along the pool, because I do think that they create more massing than maybe the general public would be anticipating. So thinking of this as sort of a landscape feature where it's like a reflecting pond is one very different thing than a fenced in pool. And on that note, I'm not quite the biggest fan of that placement of the pool. I think once the fencing goes up, it's actually going to feel a little bit disjointed. So I'm wondering if there's maybe a relocation of that could be considered, or maybe there's a tweaking to its placement, shifting left, shifting right, something like that, to just make it a little bit more. And maybe it really is sort of an extension of this building, right? Maybe it's got locker room access through this building. Again, not clear at this point, but making it sort of feel a little bit more cohesively ingrained. Whereas in this image, it just feels a little disconnected. And I don't actually think that's the intention, just based on how everything else in your presentation has come across. So maybe it's just a graphic issue. So that would be my notes on that. Being a good neighbor, that's always a difficult one, and we all try our best. So I think so far you've done a really nice job, especially hearing that you've respected a 45-foot setback along this side to Charleston Shopping Center. And I think that that's going to be noted, right? That you really are not trying to shove everything to the edges and creep up as close as possible to these property lines. You've done a very nice job of respecting boundaries and sort of focusing the buildings in ways that don't seem to be imposing to the neighbors. So kudos for that. Renovation versus new construction. This one's a tough one for me. In this image, you do not have the renovated buildings. And it reads properly. It reads clean. And I would understand this sort of desire to keep some of the history of this site and not to just scrap it and start fresh. But at the same time, I think that might just be what this site needs. And I may be the only person thinking this. So if David and Yingchi have different opinions, I'm all ears. But I think that the renovation is not going to maintain the grandeur and the drama and the history of the site that we would want, because it's these three buildings. Maybe if one of them is exceptionally spectacular, that one building gets maintained, but I think you guys have come up with a really nice cohesive design here, and I would hate to sort of have these, rocks in the river, so to speak, that sort of everything has to bubble around and sort of focus around. So I feel like this is just a really well thought out plan as it is. And I think I touched on the triangular green space already. So yeah, my comments are that overall, I think this is a really nice direction. I really appreciate your feedback, listening to the citizens of Palo Alto. And I think that there's a lot of us for a long time have felt that this is a very neglected space overall. It's going to be quite nice to see this come back to life in a profound and sort of really beautiful way. So overall, I'm very impressed with the direction so far, and I'm sort of excited to see what develops out next. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I have several questions and comments below. So first one is the circulation. So I don't have too much comments about the pedestrian and bicycle circulation. I think it's very well thoughtful, and it will be refined in the later phase. As far as the vehicle circulation, I'm wondering, I think the elevated tennis court helped, and I'm wondering whether what's your thoughts about the fire lane? Is it required by building code? And if it is, then there need to be a loop, and like the clearance, the height clearance, and the width need to meet the minimum standards. And also another thing is for the circulation is for the trash collection, because it's a huge lot and there are different functions of the buildings. So for the trash collection, it could either be a trash room that built in within the building, or a separate trash enclosure. So I would suggest to plan it ahead, instead of in the end we find a spot like whatever left over, we just squeeze a trash enclosure in, because it could be eyesore. As far as renovation and new, I have the similar feeling as Chair Rosenberger just mentioned. So I want to know, how do you determine like why those three structures are the ones to remain? Could you please
Cost.
explain?
It's all based on cost. There's nobody's clamoring to save those buildings because of their architectural heritage. But we do have a responsibility to consider cost at every phase and every part of this project. We have a cost estimator who's been working night and day. We challenged him with this notion, for example, of underground parking, and we ended up with a lot of creative conversations that led us to this kind of semi-submerged parking. And I think that we, in the process of doing that, we're talking ourselves out of a structured parking garage, not only because nobody in the community really wanted it, but also because we think that by, for example, putting the parking under the buildings that are on Middlefield, we can share those foundations. And so that the parking gets to be a lot less expensive, because we're using the same foundations for the parking as for the building, except just boosting them up a little bit. So those are things that we're really trying to focus on. I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to rewind a little bit back to the renovation versus new construction and how we picked those three buildings the original question. I did want to say that the three buildings that we were considering for renovation are the more substantial existing construction buildings. So they feature concrete construction, both in the framing and the exterior walls. The other buildings are wood frame construction, and they're less substantial. We with our consultants sort of made the decision to consider the concrete structures over the wood constructions just because of feasibility of construction and renovation, as well as upgrading all of the systems to meet seismic sustainability and accessibility.
And we have a facilities plan, facilities study for all of the existing buildings on the site. And for the most part, their effective life is only about 5 more years. Those larger buildings, as Elizabeth just pointed out, do have a more substantial structure. However, there will be a delta somewhere in the cost. At this stage of the game, we don't know sometimes renovation is more expensive, and sometimes it's less expensive. We don't know how it's going to fall at this point, but your comments are really well taken. I'll be straight with you guys. I like to defer to professionals on some of these questions. And I literally asked our cost estimator, who is very experienced in that region and actually lives in an adjoining town and is a taxpayer in the adjoining town. And so I asked him, what would you do if you were the mayor of Palo Alto and you had to choose between renovating those buildings or wiping them clean and building new? What would you do? And he said, I would wipe them clean and I would start all over. So that doesn't necessarily mean that's the right solution, but we do believe that all of us are smarter than any of us. And so we work as a team. And so we're taking all of these comments seriously. We want to be very respectful of costs. We realize taxpayers have limited budgets. And so all of these things are important. And we appreciate your feedback.
Thank you so much for sharing all this information with us. So another thing is on your first slide, you show different square footage for outdoor, indoor space, and parking space. So I noticed the indoor space increased by 100,000 square foot. So I'm wondering if we choose the renovation ones, then which means the theater, the pavilion would be the same size, then will the increased indoor space be like what's the function of the increased indoor space? And also citywide, do we have any thoughts like vision or of like maybe a larger theater is needed here or any other program that could be increased? I think that's also another thing that we could make a decision whether renovation or new is makes more sense in this case.
Well, my understanding, and maybe Amanda could speak to this, is that the theater folks really would like to have, we have 350 seats now, and I think they would like to have more seats. There are ways of expanding theaters, but they don't have a fly, for example. They don't have a fly loft, so that renovation would have to include the addition of a fly loft. And it's also important to note that both our consultants as well as the city agencies who are responsible for taking care of this place have said that the underground utilities are shot. They're 70 years old. They need to be rebuilt. So it does beg the question, if we're scraping the site clean to redo all of the underground utilities, then do we have to work around those structures? And does that add additional cost and actually hidden cost? Maybe, we don't know. But these are all important conversations, and just trust us, we're on a path. We're going to get to the right conclusion. We're going to be able to justify that conclusion. But I think I appreciate you as our colleagues' feedback on the aesthetics, because we agree with you that whoever the architect ends up being on this project would be able to do a much better job with a clean slate than having to work around those existing structures. But we'll keep going.
Sure.
And just to add to that, I think Stephen answered it well as far as your question with if we kept and renovated the theater. I think you're absolutely right. I think there are ways if we kept and renovated that we could look at making it a more usable space, whether we added seats and just the functionality of it, because I think there is a need for it to be improved upon and adding capacity. So those are things that we could look at.
Okay, thank you. And another thing regarding the parking, I think there are like two different types of needs. One is like as board member, as Chair Rosenberger just mentioned, is more focused on the daily pickup and drop offs. And the other is more like for the special events. So people might need longer parking. So either going to the games or to the theater, people will park there for a couple of hours instead of like the drop off and pickup kids, it might need only less than 15 minutes. So defined drop-off pickup area or the above ground short-term parking would be necessary compared. So if the underground parking is more just for the longer period, then I would suggest to consider maybe closer to those facilities. I understand that Stephen just mentioned about the financial issues, like we can share the foundation along the middle field. That's one thing. And also functionality, I think it would also make sense to be clear to be close to either the theater or the where larger events happen.
And actually, if you don't mind me jumping in on that note, it looks like it's going to be a very long linear parking structure. And so I would expect there to be multiple egress points. And maybe there's the opportunity for those points to be not just like your creepy stairwell that we see everywhere, but like an actually celebrated egress. And it brings you out towards the middle of the site, and then you can walk to wherever you need to go from there. But instead of having these just like tiny little concrete stairwells, and again, I don't know whether there's a fire issue there or not, but since it's partially submerged and not fully submerged, we might have a more generous opportunity for something to actually be pretty and welcoming and interesting, and more spaces along the path rather than just concrete tunnels that you have to sort of run out of. So sorry to interrupt, but thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And my last comment is, well, I think my colleague also mentioned about is we want to see like it can be built in phases. So when we plan it, we can clear it out, like which is phase 1, which is phase 2. And that's all the comments I have. Thank you.
And David, if you don't mind, I've got 2 quick ones. I promise they'll be quick, and then we are going to take it home for us. The rental flex space, I just wanted to understand, is that intended to be cafes, offices, whoever wants to be there? Are we going to see tech incubators there? Are we going to see Ada's Cafe there again? I love that place. So any of those, I know they're right at Mitchell Park, but wondering what's the intention. And again, you don't know who's going to be there right now, but what is the intention of that rental/flex space?
Yes. So currently Coverly does rent out uses. So if you have a community meeting, you can rent out a flex space. We've used the pavilion for community meetings. So that was the intention for rental flex space. This is also a space that other tenants can use. It's really multi-use space that can feature things like classes, rehearsal space, etc. So you can see that a lot of the tenants will be in those other buildings with other labels like the education enrichment, visual arts, performing arts, etc. But that rental flex space is sort of designated for those those rotating uses, and then any other tenants who.
Great. So it's not like they're gonna have a long-term tenant there, right? It's not like they're going to rent it out like an office space or anything like that. It really is for use in the community and within the people that are sort of already on site. Is that accurate?
I think both and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And then my last question, I'm going to hand it back over to David. Is there a bus stop nearby? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
Can you point it out on the map?
There's currently a bus stop. Let me see if I can annotate. It's around
the Makers.
Around here-ish.
Beautiful. Okay. And so is there any sort of like bump out or any sort of extra space that's going to be there or denoting? I mean, it looks like there's some existing trees there as well. So is that going to be sort of celebrated and embraced, or are we going to just sort of
Well, this is
get it lost in the shuffle?
Yeah.
This is the next stage of talks.
Perfect.
We have discussed that this triangle could also be a good place for a bus or transit stop. However, this is something that we definitely need to work out with our transportation consultant.
So we would just move the bus stop a few hundred feet, a couple hundred feet, and then make it really, our transportation consultants had a great comment. They said that transit and bicycles and pedestrians all go together. So the idea of having transit at that entrance on Middlefield could be a really powerful.
Yeah, agreed.
connection.
And of note that there is a bus station that's here already. So you know, moving the bus stop is not something that we take lightly, and we will definitely coordinate with all of the appropriate agencies.
Kendra, I have one more question for you, if you don't mind.
Please.
What do you, I really appreciate your comment about the pool, because I feel the same way. I mean, one of the things that's very aware to us is that this land is precious. Every square foot of this open space is precious. We keep hearing that from the community. So I have a question. What if the pool went on the top of the building that's to the right of the recreation wellness? What if the pool was a rooftop pool?
You know, you actually read my mind on that. That was one of the things that I was thinking. I'm like, well, you've got the parking under the tennis courts. Maybe you have some parking under there. And then really just sort of having that be sorry, I'm trying to draw on this again. Having that be a rooftop pool in this area, I think is a very interesting idea. Now, again, I know that there's some structural engineering that has to go with that. Having, you know, rooftop pools is not a small feat, and I understand costs would be factored in there. So there's two elements. One is that, you know, when you walk by Rinconada, you can see everybody and you hear the kids, and you can sort of see through the fence, and you know, they even had that snack shop, at least when I was a kid. I don't remember if they have it anymore, but they had this little snack shop that sold candy inside and outside of the pool area. And it was very engaging to sort of walk past it. So I'm of two minds on this. One is that, yes, that's a good way to capture back that green space, but it does detach the public from the pool. So depending upon how many months of the year it's open, maybe that would determine this, right? Rinconada being open, I believe, only a month or two of the year to the public really sort of limits your interaction. If this was open more of the months of the year, then maybe staying on the ground is a good thing. But if it is mostly for private use or for classes, maybe moving it up would be sufficient. So I leave that in your capable hands, but I think it's a very worthwhile situation to consider. So with that, I hand this over to David to take us home.
To add a bit to this, you know, the major diagonal here, I think, would be enhanced if it was functionally more useful, so that it, for example, did have a bus stop, drop off, lay-by. The one thing about the site right now is you access and enter it, for the most part, the largest number of people enter where the big parking lot is, and it's a wasteland of concrete. But the idea that this promenade is going to be something very special is a really great thing. But what I would think is, if you had a sort of a lay-by that a bus could go off and drop off, people could drop off, because it's really quite central to everything. You can go into either one side or the other to get to your facility that you're going to get to eventually. The other part of it is that wouldn't it be nice if it had a destination at the far end? Right now, there's a building there that's shown. Can you mark that little square? I think that if I understand correctly, that's a football building. Is that correct? Do you know? I mean, there's a piece of space that still is part of our site there. It's not part of the parking lot specifically in the back, that is somehow not part of the whole function of this place here. And Do you know? Is it?
Yes, so
Yeah.
that is the Friends of the Palo Alto Library
Yeah.
has a space there.
Yeah.
The reason why it's not included is because that's not part of the area that we would purchase from the school district.
No, I understand that. In fact, and everything beyond the line down the middle of the site, there's a line black line that, well, is it black or blue? Anyhow, there is a line down the middle of the site that's including, if I have it correctly, that's the total site, including the purchase. But this little piece over here is kind of separate, I think. So what I'm saying is that if you have to get to that parking lot, it's an incredible right turn, left turn, very bad circulation. But so if in some way the access to that rear parking area and including making the connection left to right as well was smoothed out and could come through that area, there'd be a larger piece of something at that end.
Yeah.
Right there, that you could do something with.
I love that idea.
Maybe it's a good area.
I love that idea. We are constrained because the existing surface parking lot is not on our site. And the building that you just mentioned is not on our site.
Right.
So, but if it's possible to collaborate with the school district, obviously that would be, preferable.
I mean, this is a major piece that you're putting here, and it goes straight towards something that would be a terrific kind of ending for that promenade.
I would agree with that as well. My counter argument, if I can make one, is that if there's sort of smaller trees throughout, right? It's the same way as we have sort of a windy road, you don't really have a final destination. So if this is more landscaped in a way, that could really break up this gunshot view that you would have going down this promenade, which, I think could do that. But I love David's idea of having a destination focal point at the end there. But I think that landscape will help us either way.
So I sort of combined that with the drop off, which I want to state again, I think is an important part to this too, to have some bump in to the site. So you could drop off people at that midpoint on Middlefield, and maybe it becomes a little more urban at that point, paved, et cetera, area where, the comment was made, well, I'll come and pick you up, where are you? And it's not a bad spot to go to for a quick pickup that somebody's waiting for at that point, as well as, just to add more to the character of that particular concept of a promenade. And then if the your red line through the parking lot, whatever the connecting street is going to be at that end of the site, if it was able to make that parcel at the end more useful to the center itself here, I think it would make a huge difference. I'm very, very worried that what you show, however, is going to impact existing facilities. So in the final presentation, at least maybe one of the drawings would indicate that, because I don't want the concept of this to be lost, the diagonal idea here. And so it has to be part of the realistic planning from the point at which somebody else picks it up and decides what goes where.
Yeah, you mean with respect to phasing, right? Especially?
Yeah, the phasing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to understand the impact of that.
Yeah, we'll do those plans.
Okay. I don't know about the rooftop pool. Maybe it could be, well, where could it be, maybe instead of, the tennis courts, I don't know. I'm a little lost on where to show that. The other thing that concerns me is that we've given up on the pavilion, It's taken down here, and the theater. So the shapes of what you're showing don't have, at this point, a recognition that you need to put back those facilities.
Yes, you're right.
Or at least alternatively, either it's this or it's that. And then the decision is made somewhere along the line. What can we really afford to build here? And what do we want to build, I'm just concerned that flexibility in programming is for the future affects both existing facilities and projected uses. So I think that the theater function is very useful here. I want to comment that the symphony, that children's symphony that plays here. A pool, we have a pool at Rinconada, but I have a feeling that and I know that on my table somebody asked for a pool. I don't know how big a concern it is, but I think it's pretty big, and it's for the future. And the future means there's a growing population here as required by our housing element, so maybe this is a good place for a second pool because maybe there isn't another place that will ever see one. So it's possible to really think about both the larger facilities, the theater facility. Again, my table said the present theater really works. People use it and it's very active. And we know the pavilion is also kind of a great facility. It has a lot of flexibility. Can sort of imagine dance classes in there as well as some basketball takes place in there. It's a very, very multi-use facility. So considering something like that, and where does it go? Or is it already in the area that's called recreation wellness? It takes a little more planning for all of that to be considered. I guess, Stephen, I kind of go along with the through traffic concept. On the other hand, my personal opinion is that you plan a little bit of extra on-site parking, because the inner spaces of these courtyards is a lot of nice open space and plenty of open space. And then you have the promenade as well. So some of the perimeters could, in the back where it isn't as visual, back where you want to come to the playing fields, can be more on-site parking. It's too bad that just this big, I don't know why that piece has been left out of here, because at the very least you want to take a parking lot and landscape it at the same time and make it an enjoyable parking lot. If you look at the Rinconada, has such really nice landscaping all around it, every piece of it. So it's a shame to lose that funny shaped rectangular back there and not have that a part of this site. And I would hope that maybe you guys can work on that one somehow, sort of beat it out of the people who are resisting that. I mean, it's not being used for anything here except a parking lot. So should be part of what you guys, what you design.
But David, I want to add, I want to reinforce that, and I realize that there are constraints and all of that, but we're all here in this meeting as colleagues, trying to wrestle with design. So if design is the focus of our discussion, and if the value is the focus of our discussion, imagine the value of this land, and imagine how precious it is. Imagine that surface parking with only air above it is a very inefficient use of this land. And
that's true.
That's the reason why the tennis courts are above the parking. And imagine if that tennis court parking slab went all the way across those fields.
Yeah, that's true.
Imagine how many more pickleball courts and tennis courts And we're talking about the cost of an elevated slab. You know, there's no air conditioning, there's no, you know,
Okay.
I mean, so as far as return on investment, and another thing that we didn't mention, because it's at another level of detail, is there's enough room in that deck that all of those courts, those tennis courts or pickleball courts or whatever they turn out to be, can be on the back of that slab, and all across the front of the slab is an elevated athletic promenade, where people can sit and watch the games as if they're in bleachers, right? And I can imagine, a whole social. I imagine that the social output of that promenade might be very different than the bicycle promenade, might be very different than some of the courtyards, for example. So, one of the things that I want to point out that we heard loud and clear from the community is they really like the idea of places where people can come and gather and communicate with each other and play with each other and be with each other. And so that is an important part of everything that we're thinking about. And so to your point, imagine we could double the square footage of that tennis parking, that tennis and recreation, outdoor recreation, if we extended it above the parking lot that we don't own. So, obviously that's an aggressive statement, but we're talking about design right now, and
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it could be extended. It could be extended, and I do. Your point is well taken. I think that a raised structure like this could be very, very useful. You could even put bleachers in part of it.
Yes.
That
yes,
to be part of that. Maybe, and you could also take advantage of your passageway through there and maybe make a cut in this raised area so that it's sort of a directional thing for getting people through to the open field.
Yes.
And the bleachers, et cetera,
yes,
so.
yes.
But I just think it's a part of what you can, including the FOPAL area there, because FOPAL could be organized much better than they are right now. They could be put in one place, so it should be something that almost is done for them in this facility here, all in one place, which, by the way, ought to have probably truck access or something for the books that go in and out of there. They have quite a bit of movement, of facility, of goods that come in and out.
Yes.
So yeah, extend the idea. I think it's a great thought to do that. And justifies kind of the through passage as well, and car. Will you be laying that out as the ground floor of that? You laid it out for parking? So that some areas that are inside here, flex outdoor space could increase.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I just think it really is something you deserve to have.
It's a really awkward, that whole, to your point, it's a really awkward set of spaces at a very prominent location, and they deserve more attention.
But to your credit, I think you've done a quite nice job of integrating that and sort of incorporating it with the constraints that you have at this time. And while in an ideal world, I do support David in that you guys should just grab all of that. We understand that that's sort of at a deeper level than maybe we can address today. But I agree with David that if that was possible, that would be sort of a beneficial element for you guys. But for what it's worth, I think that with the constraints you have, you've done a really nice job. So kudos to you guys. And with that, I think we'll wrap this up unless you have any final thoughts, David.
No.
Okay.
I think we've covered it all.
Yeah. Well done. Really nicely done with the incorporating everyone's ideas from the different schemas here, and really, really excited to see this move forward and to hear a bit more about phasing and sort of more about the landscaping as well, because that is such an integral part. And of course, the architecture as that comes along a little bit further down the path. So best of luck to you with your community meeting number 3 and to the city council meeting following that. So thank you very much for the presentation. We really, really appreciate getting to see this so early on. So thank you to staff as well.
Thank you for all of your
All right.
creative ideas.
And if you have any questions, I believe that you can just reach out and we'll be happy to answer or reiterate anything that sort of went on there. Okay. We're not going to take a break. We're going to power through the last 2 items here. So, and we don't need to vote or anything like that since it is just a study session. So we will just sort of conclude the study session. So thank you. Moving on to board member questions, comments, announcements, or future meeting agenda items. Thank you. Nothing. Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Actually, and right before I adjourn, I'm just going to say we have an ad hoc committee after this for 3265 El Camino Real. That is for myself and board member Chen. So we will be doing that right now offline. Thank you for everybody's time and attention today. With that, we are adjourned.